Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today is another glorious day, mid-November, and I'm doing several projects and doing several different videos. Now, the video that I'm going to be doing right now is the harvest and cleanup of my Jerusalem artichokes. Now, I live in Utah, zone 6/7, and I've grown Jerusalem artichokes for about a year and a half. So they've gone through one winter. I stored them last winter and found a wonderful way to store them where they lasted so long. I harvested them in September. I was able to give away sprouting Jerusalem artichokes to people in one of my cutting exchanges in April. And they had not rotted, none of them had rotted, and I used them over the winter. So I'm going to be storing them the same way this winter, but I'm going to clean out the bed a little bit more than I did last time. The bed has sunk a lot. You know, it's a hugelkultur bed. There's a lot of rotting material at the base, and so I need to refill the bed. So I'm going to pull out as many of the Jerusalem artichokes as I can get, and then we're going to amend the bed and replant it. So let me show you what they look like right now and show you some pictures of what they looked like when they were flowering. So these are what my Jerusalem artichokes look like right now. We've gone through several freezing nights, below, in the low 20s. And I probably should have harvested these quite a while ago. Hopefully they will store over the winter. We'll find out, if they rot or if they don't. They are definitely hardy, so I could leave them just like this and they would last over the winter. The only issue is these spread so quickly that it's just going to fill up this bed way too much. Once we get the tops off of these, I'll show you how much the bed is sunk. I filled it up to the top this spring and it just keeps sinking. That's one of the issues with doing hugelkultur beds. Now, Jerusalem artichokes do flower, and they are absolutely gorgeous when they flower. They look like sunflowers. So this is a picture of what they look like, and they do get quite tall. Now, I'm 5'2", 5'2½". That ½ inch is very important when you're as short as I am. But I would say the tallest ones of these are probably a good 10 to 12 feet tall. They are in a 17-inch bed, so maybe I'm overestimating that a little bit. But from what I've read, they can get up to about 12 feet tall. They are easy to grow. They don't need a ton of water, and they don't need a ton of fertilizer. Matter of fact, I'd be very careful how much you fertilize your Jerusalem artichokes. They spread heavily. This bed is 17 inches tall, and the bottom, I'd say third, is just wood chips, and I've already been having escapees out the bottom of this bed. So they do escape, and if they escape, you will not get them under control again. They're extremely hardy. I'll put the zone that they're hardy to at the bottom of the screen because I can't remember that right off the bat. But they are very good to eat. My favorite way to eat them is to slice them thinly and then roast them until they're crispy with olive oil. Excellent. They taste really good. Now, another nickname that they have kind of talks a little bit about what they do to your body. It's not very pleasant. But if you eat small amounts of them, I haven't noticed an issue with that. It's when you eat the larger amounts. One thing that I'm going to try this year is I'm going to try fermenting them. They said that that really actually helps take away that issue. So let's get these tops cut down, and I'll show you what the Jerusalem artichokes look like and see how many we can actually pull out of this bed. Now I'm just going to be cutting these into smaller pieces so that I can compost them more easily. I've read that you can't compost them, that they will sprout in your compost beds, but these are dry and dead, and I don't have any worry about these composting. I will not be adding any of the actual tubers to my bed though. So all the vegetation is cut down. This is all going up to the compost pile. Now what I need to do is see if I can pull up my irrigation. Oh, that's not going to be that hard. So we have all those lines. We'll get those all pulled up, and then we're going to pull everything out of this bed. Okay, we've got quite a bit of the straw pulled out of this bed. So let me get my shovel and see if we can kind of gently start prying around the edges without destroying the bed. Okay, these are really hard to pry up. Let's see if we got any of them. So let's see if I can find anything. Found my first really tiny one. We've got to be really careful where we throw these because these are going to sprout all over the place. Let me see if I can find a good spot to put them. I think I'll put any of the little tiny pieces in my bucket. Pieces without sprouts on it will go in the compost. Another really tiny one. Any roots I'm going to be throwing in this bucket also. That way we're not spreading these through my compost pile. So far they're just really tiny. Last year they were huge. So these were really, really deep. This is why they spread like crazy. This is the biggest one I've found so far. Not big at all. Last year they were 4 times this size. There's an interesting looking one. So this is what I've pulled out so far. Most of them are kind of a lot smaller than they were last year. Every once in a while we'll get one that was close to the size that they were last year. But they seem to be quite small. And I'm finding a lot of them way, way, way down deep. So you can see this right here. This is a good size one. And let's see if we can, well, we got pulled off the... So this is the largest one I've pulled out so far. Now they seem to be pulled out, they seem to come out attached to these really long roots. So let me see if I can pull another one up and show you what that looks like. So I've been digging all the way to the bottom to find these. So this is why they can be such a problem. So they go really deep. Here's another interesting looking one. Okay, so I'm going to pull on this one and see what we can get out just by pulling it out. So there's a bunch of little ones on this one. I don't know if you could, how well you can see this, but they're on the long, so there's little bulbules on these long roots. You can see how this one formed along the root. And this is why they can be so invasive. Is they bury way down deep in the soil, so you can't get all of them. And then they spread far and wide. Let's see if there's any more big ones in here. Handful of small ones. A leaf in here, see? This one was at the very bottom of the bed where I'm finding them sneak out the bottom edge. So they're sneaking out the bottom edge and going outside the bed through this area, right down here. So if I were to do this differently, I would absolutely use a weed cloth at the bottom of these beds if you're going to be growing Jerusalem artichokes. There's another good size one. So I do have to say, having a bed like this makes digging them so much easier. This is a mix of the regular Mel's mix that I do that is 1/3 compost, 1/3 peat moss, and 1/3 vermiculite. And then last year I brought in a bunch of just regular garden soil just to see how it does. And whatever was left over I threw in this bed to build it back up. So it wasn't mixed in very well because the plants were already growing by the time I put it in. I just threw it over the top. So this is mixing it in really well. And then I'm just going to add some more compost and probably some peat moss, depending on how full it is once I'm done. And if I add peat moss, I'm definitely going to add vermiculite. And the vermiculite is just basically an expanded man-made material that holds water and it releases it slowly. So it makes it so I don't have to water as much. That along with heavy mulch. So this bed definitely needs to be re-amended. There's a lot of soil missing out of it. It's probably a good 6 inches. But we've got compost and peat moss and possibly even some of the soil from over there from our straw bales. Now this will be part of my next video because we're going to talk about amending beds. And we're going to talk about compost in that one. So right now what I want to do is dump this entire bucket out. It's full of roots and tubers, and separate out the roots and tubers and see how many tubers we got. So this is what I have. It totals out to be almost a full 5-gallon container. And I'm going to spread them out right here. Now I'm not going to cure them. You don't need to cure Jerusalem artichokes like you do potatoes and sweet potatoes. I'm just going to let them dry out overnight a little bit. It's not going to freeze tonight, so I'm not worried about them freezing. And then tomorrow I'm going to separate out the ones that I'm going to plant and the ones that I'm going to ferment, and then the ones that I'm going to store so that I can eat them fresh over the winter. Now some of them were quite large and some of them are quite small. Now this is what's left over. It's going to be, all the roots and the little tiny ones. It's going to be thrown in the garbage can so I don't accidentally spread them. Now I'm not going to film the process tomorrow of storing them. And I'm not doing it today because we're racing sunlight. It's getting a little bit late. It's getting a little cold. But this is what I'm going to store them in. I've got a bulb crate. It's a little large for these. I've got some burlap. And then I've got vermiculite. Let me show you what vermiculite looks like. So vermiculite, like I said, is kind of a man-made product. It soaks up a lot of water and holds onto it and releases it slowly. So what I'll do when storing the Jerusalem artichokes is I'll lay out a layer of burlap, put down a layer of the Jerusalem artichokes, and then cover those with barely moist vermiculite. It's going to be, I definitely don't want the vermiculite to feel wet, and I don't want it to clump together. It's going to be just wet enough that it will hold a little bit of moisture because we don't want those to rot. So we'll put the burlap, layer of Jerusalem artichokes, layer of vermiculite over the top, and then we'll just continue those layers with another layer of vermiculite over the very top and then a final layer of burlap, and then we'll just store them in my garage that doesn't freeze. I did that, like I said, I did that last year, and they lasted the entire season, all the way through till April, when they started growing again for the year. Now, if you don't want to store the Jerusalem artichokes over the winter, one of the better ways to do it is just to leave them in ground and go dig them up as you need them if your ground doesn't freeze. If your ground freezes, then you just leave them there until spring, and then maybe dig them up before they start growing. I would love to hear if you grow Jerusalem artichokes and what you use them for. I'd love to find more recipes so that I can use them in different ways. And hopefully this video has been helpful for you. If it has been helpful, I hope you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.